Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar Understanding the Supply-Demand Gap and Choosing High-Quality Carbon Projects. Thank you so much for joining today's session. It's really great to have you all here. So today we will be exploring the growing demand versus the limited supply of high-quality carbon credits and how this gap also affects availability, pricing, and selection of carbon projects, and also how to choose the right project for your carbon offsetting. So at the end of the session, we will have plenty of time to answer all your questions. So feel free to drop any questions you might have or anything that comes to mind during the webinar in the chat, and we will get to it during the Q&A. But first, let's get started with a short introduction of myself and Green Earth. So my name is Wink Schouwink. I am the head of business development at Green Earth, and I'm responsible for the investments in our carbon projects, as well as helping companies to reach net zero. We do this by helping them purchasing carbon credits. So I have a background in sustainability and global business and over 7 years of working experience in the carbon markets. I'm calling in from Nairobi, Kenya, as we have some of our projects located in East Africa. And I'm very curious to know also more about you, who is all joining this webinar. So feel free to put your name, your company, and where you're calling in from in the chat. So Green Earth, we are a boots on the ground project developer. And we are an end-to-end project developer, which means that we are overseeing the full project lifecycle with a local presence. So we create nature, biodiversity, and livelihood projects, and we manage a large portfolio of high-quality carbon credits all over the globe, and thus with a special focus on ecosystem restoration, biodiversity, and community development. So through our projects, we help companies become more sustainable and reach their net zero goals. So we count on a team stationed of around over 20 countries, embodying a very international workforce that also reflects our diverse and widespread operations. So now let's get started with net zero and carbon projects. So in our last webinar, we became familiar with sustainability strategies. What are carbon credits and how to integrate carbon offsets to achieve net zero? And reaching net zero is no longer just an ambition. It's an urgent economic necessity. So for most organizations and smaller companies, larger companies, eliminating 100% of the carbon emissions with just internal reductions is most of the time not feasible, at least not at the moment. So this is where carbon credits come in. And a high quality carbon project will remove or avoid CO2 from the atmosphere. And once this whole process of sequestering carbon is certified, the project will generate carbon credits. And do you remember? Each carbon credit represents 1 ton of CO2 that is then either removed or avoided from the atmosphere. And that carbon credit can be used by companies to compensate for the unavoidable carbon emissions. So without carbon offsetting, companies will struggle to reach net zero, as they will always have past and irreducible emissions. So this makes carbon projects very essential and critical for building a sustainable economy and reaching net zero goals. So there is a stigma around carbon offsets. Some say they are a license to pollute. However, these kind of claims and stigmas are actually statistically incorrect. So there's a paper published by MSCY, the research conducted by Trove, and they indicate that companies that use carbon offsets actually decarbonize twice as fast as companies that don't. And when you look at it objectively, it also makes perfect sense because after all, carbon offsets are a cost. And when a cost can only be avoided if emissions are reduced, you're going to reduce earlier. which means that carbon offsets, besides having a huge impact, of course, on the planet, also really function as a strong incentive for companies to reevaluate their practices and how they are doing business in order to become more sustainable and also, of course, then lower their emissions. And that is exactly what you can see here on the screen in this slide. So the orange reflects companies that are using offsets, and they reduce more slowly. And the dark blue are companies that are using offsets already. So they start reducing much earlier, as you can see in the slide. But what exactly is the supply-demand gap that we're talking about today in this carbon market? So a lot of companies are refining their net zero strategies. So we are really seeing a significant shift in the carbon market. We see that high quality carbon offsets are increasingly sought after as buyers need a guarantee that the project they are supporting, or they are purchasing from really contributes towards a more sustainable future and is actually delivering what they claim it delivers. And this is causing an increase in demand for high quality carbon projects. And of course, this also increases the price for high integrity credits and its impact. For example, like nature-based solutions projects. So here is a few points that we see if we look into pricing. First of all, nature-based credits, so carbon credits that are coming from nature projects, often sell at 40% premium price, and projects with verified co-benefits have prices 78% higher than those without co-benefits. Second, also projects that are SDG aligned have a considerable price premium of 155% compared to projects without any SDG alignment. And then last but not least, removal credits. So removal credits from projects like reforestation are priced 381% higher than reduction credits. That's a lot, right? And do you remember like the difference between removal credits and reduction credits? It's something that we also covered in the last webinar, but a removal project removes carbon from the atmosphere, like tree planting, and a reduction credits avoid CO2 going into the atmosphere. So that's the difference. So this is all like a very, very clear signal that high integrity, long-term projects, especially focused on nature, are the future of the net zero market. So while we all know, and like there are so many different carbon credits available in the market, it's very important to understand and to be careful with projects that no longer meet today's quality. So there is the new gold standard, and this represents the credits that are approved by the Integrity Council's core carbon principles, also known as CCP. And this new gold standard represents less than 4% of the current market volume. So as you see, like everyone is chasing this very small pool of high integrity projects, which results, of course, in that buyers will definitely face scarcity, but also higher prices. So it's not just about price, it's really also about the availability of these high integrity carbon projects and credits. So what we see currently and experience in this market is that a lot of buyers are already securing their access to this high quality supply. And they do this via either long-term offtake agreements or early investments. You may find yourself unable to buy credits of these high quality projects to meet your 2030 target at any reasonable price if you don't start today. So this is really like the supply-demand gap that we see in the carbon market. But that's also what makes it very important to understand that you need to start identifying high-quality carbon projects, but also understand what are the low-carbon projects and how do you find them and how do you identify them. Because not all carbon projects are of high quality. So due to the high demand for offsets, The market is really flooded with projects that really look good on paper, but might not generate the impact that you expect. So to protect your offset portfolio and your reputation, you must know and understand how to identify low quality projects. So first of all, you need to look into baselines of convenience. If projects have that, it says that these projects use inflated or unrealistic business as usual scenarios. So they really overstate their carbon reductions or removals. So if the baseline feels like a stretch, their impact likely is too. Then secondly, additionality gaps. So this means that if a project was going to happen anyway because of laws or profits, so without the use of carbon credits, then the carbon credits don't have like real value. So they are not additional to the project. Then leakage and permanence risk. So be aware of projects that simply shift deforestation to neighboring areas, or, for example, lack the long-term protections that is required to ensure that the carbon remains sequestered. And lastly, the outsourced implementation. There are quite a lot of developers that are not present on the ground, but are operating from a distance. So they really miss the local details that lead to success or failure. So to make a project successful, a developer must work locally already from the very, very beginning. So now let's take a look at how to identify high quality carbon credits. So here's a quick checklist that will help you. First of all, and here it is again, additionality. So the project generating the offset must result in emission reductions or removals that would not have occurred in the absence of the project. So in other words, the environmental benefits must be additional to what would have happened under a business as usual scenario. So it must be additional. Then permanence. So the carbon removal or avoidance must last for a long time. For example, reforestation projects must demonstrate long-term land management practices that really protect carbon stocks for decades. And of course, there are like mechanisms such as buffer pools or insurances, and they are often used to really safeguard against those potential reversals, such as natural disasters or human activities on the ground. So this is why it is very important that the project developer has that local presence on the ground. And this ensures that the project takes like regional factors into account and really works closely with the local communities to ensure projects' success. At third, we have verification. So the project must be validated by external auditors and approved and verified by leading third-party certifiers, such as FARA and Gold Standard. Then transparency and traceability. So high-quality registries maintain public records of every credit issued. So these registries are used by FARA and Gold Standard, and they show the records, but also the details of the project, verification history, but also the final buyer of the credit. So this transparency is very crucial for preventing double counting and for building trust among buyers, but actually amongst like all stakeholders in the project. So look for project developers who really report transparently on their project and their impacts. Then co-benefits. Carbon isn't the only thing that matters in the world. And while, of course, the primary focus of carbon credit is to address the carbon emissions, the most impactful projects also deliver co-benefits beyond the carbon. Think about biodiversity improvements, soil productivity, community engagement, local job employment, and so on. So high-quality carbon projects consist of many aspects. To recap, it has to really remove or reduce or avoid CO2. The carbon emission reductions of the project must be measurable and verified by a third party. And of course, it must offer the co-benefits. And if we zoom a bit more into the co-benefit, it means that beyond carbon mitigation, the project needs to offer other benefits to the environment and local communities, such as biodiversity restoration, habitat protection, job creation, additional income stream for locals, and infrastructure. And this is why transparency about the co-benefits are extremely important for carbon projects and for the developers. But the good news is that with proper due diligence, you can really make sure that you are indeed acquiring high quality carbon projects that are actually impacting nature as we expect them to. Checking for third-party verification from agencies like Gold Standard and Verra, or from additional rating agencies like Silvera and B0, is a great way to make sure that the project that you're contributing to or you are buying is truly impactful and of high integrity. So Green Earth's portfolio also features a very diverse range of high quality projects, really designed to tackle climate change from multiple angles. Whether it's through active reforestation and afforestation, to sequester carbon, or habitat restoration and biodiversity protection to safeguard endangered species or ecosystems, or providing energy efficient cook stoves to reduce emissions and also improve lives in local communities. Every project that we design is for measurable impact. So by investing in high quality carbon projects, you aren't just offsetting your emissions, but you are supporting holistic, verified solutions globally that really protects our planet and its people on the ground as well. So let's take a closer look of some of Green Earth's work and the projects that we develop on the ground. Let's dive into two different kinds of projects. And we finance, of course, these projects with the companies that are offsetting their emissions with our project. So first of all, the Bulindi Agroforestry and Chimpanzee Conservation Project. So this project is located in Western Uganda, and it addresses the urgent need to protect the habitat of over 300 wild chimpanzees living on our project sites. Most forest homes are rapidly shrinking due to agricultural practices, but also by deforestation for constructing of roads. And because of the deforestation, a lot of the chimps are moving to the local villages, and they are destroying all the crops of the farmers because most farmers are producing sugarcane, for example. So we help solve this conflict between the humans, the chimps, and nature. And we do this by an agroforestry model, which is community-led conservation. And we are restoring native tree cover and creating sustainable livelihoods. So we plant a mix of biodiverse native tree species in combination with the cash crops like coffee and cocoa. And this really empowers the local farmers with income from the crops like the coffee, but also with training and essential services, for example, clean water or education. So it's really a model to show how nature restoration and community well-being can go hand in hand. And we use carbon credits to finance this project. But content always says more than words. So let's have a look to our project video on the ground.
Located on the equator and blessed with an enormous amount of sun and rain, Uganda is one of the most fertile countries on the planet. Alongside Uganda's population growth, its demand for farmland has increased, putting pressure on its dense tropical forests and woodlands. Local communities depend on farmland for food and income, but a different community depends on these forests for food and shelter. Uganda's chimpanzees. Through the Bulindi Agroforestry and Chimpanzee Conservation Project, we work on solutions that help humans, chimpanzees, and nature. The project is a collaboration between the Bulindi Chimpanzee and Community Project and Green Earth, and addresses the urgent conservation needs for the wild chimpanzee population in western Uganda. To do that, we are restoring more than 22,000 hectares of forest habitat by planting 31.5 million trees. We've set up multiple tree nurseries where we grow different types of trees that we distribute to local landowners. Trees that help us restore safe forest habitat for chimpanzees and other wildlife while yielding additional income for these farmers. We also help them develop the necessary skills to implement sustainable agroforestry on their lands. And we work on educational programs designed to minimize human-wildlife conflict and accomplish peaceful coexistence in these areas. Green Earth is an on-site project developer working closely with farmers and landowners to align global goals with local needs. Our projects are designed to make the planet's future brighter, greener and healthier. Join us in this vital mission.
So by planting trees, you really remove carbon from the atmosphere, as we have seen in this project video, resulting in a carbon removal credit. But we also develop projects that reduce the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere, a carbon reduction credit. So one of those projects, an example, is Green Earth's Hongera energy efficient cookstove project. This project is located in Kenya, and a lot of people here, they still use firewood to cook on or to make their meals. So they still use open firewood and the traditional stoves to make their food and their water. And this results, of course, in a lot of deforestation, a lot of indoor smoke, and of course, a lot of CO2 emissions. So by introducing this sustainable cook stove, our project significantly reduces the amount of firewood needed and thus the pressure on deforestation, and also consequently reducing the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere, helping to protect the forest, but also improve the family well-being. Let's also have a quick look in how this project looked like.
The Hongera Energy Efficient Cook Stoves project manufactures and distributes efficient cook stoves to local communities in Kenya. Our project is distributing 150,000 cook stoves and aims to provide households with a more sustainable cooking method that significantly reduces the need for firewood and improves indoor air pollution. We are locally manufacturing and distributing energy-efficient cook stoves to help these communities. But the project also contributes to broader ecological goals. The project aims to restore the natural balance by curbing deforestation in these forest habitats. It has been developed under the gold standard and is expected to mitigate 2.5 million tons of carbon emissions. By empowering communities, we're leading real change, creating a greener, healthier, and happier planet. Explore our impactful projects and discover how you can make a difference by visiting our website at green.earth.
So also for me, it still feels really great to see the project videos and everything that we do on the ground. The project makes such a big impact, even more than we can imagine together. So, and of course, we can only make this impact with the carbon credits and companies that compensate for their footprint. And of course, if you compensate your footprint with Green Earth, we also help you communicate your positive impact. So our partners, they will receive a carbon unit certificate, a personalized impact report with the amount of trees planted, the sustainable development goals supported, a climate badge, and more marketing and communication materials. So now that we have explored like the critical differences between high quality and low quality carbon projects, the question remains, how do you as a company navigate to this complex landscape with confidence? So at Green Earth, we bridge that gap for you through due diligence and deep technical expertise and on-the-ground local presence. So we don't just offer carbon credits, but we really help you curate a portfolio that aligns perfectly with your corporate values and net zero ambitions with these high quality carbon projects. Our project portfolio really consists exclusively of high quality carbon projects where we maintain a boots on the ground approach. So as a project developer, we eliminate all the gray areas. We ensure total transparency, traceability, and verified impact that you can stand behind. So now it's time to answer all your questions. So let me have a look into all the questions that you have shared with me, and I will get back to you. I received one question about pricing. So what is the price of a carbon offset, and can we also already buy carbon credits for the coming years? So first, to answer your last question, yeah, that is possible. So you can already secure and fix the carbon credits for upcoming years. You can sign a contract now and pay upon delivery of the carbon credits. And carbon credits, yeah, it really depends on the project, but let's say between 15 and 50 euros per ton of CO2. So it's quite a range, but it really depends per project type, of course. Let me see what other questions we have. Are all your projects certified? Yes, so I also showed you a slide about certification. So all our projects are certified either via Verra or Gold Standard, and these are the most well-known certification bodies and critical certifications that will come to your project and really assess the quality and the carbon that you have sequestered from the project. And we also use those registries to retire the carbon credits in your name. Let me see if we have any more. Where are your projects located? You mentioned East Africa. Do you also have projects in Brazil, for example? So Green Earth, we have projects all around the globe. Indeed, a lot of in East Africa, but also in Kazakhstan. We also have a plastic credit project in Sri Lanka, for example. We do have partners in Brazil that we sell the carbon credits from. So yes, everywhere we can source the carbon credits, and then we do our own due diligence. I think these were the questions so far. So if you have any more questions, you can also send me an email. It's wienke.schouwing@green.earth, and I will answer your question via email. So feel free to do so or to reach out via our website. And I want really to thank you for joining this webinar, and I hope to see you in the next webinar as well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.